A faint drizzle swept across the Los Angeles hills as Matt Damon tapped away at the script displayed on his tablet. He was seated in a quiet study, far from the clamor of paparazzi or press events. Over the years, he had come to value these serene pockets of time where he could sink into creative ideas without interruption. On this particular evening, though, an uncharacteristic heaviness lingered in his mind, an undercurrent of restlessness he could not pinpoint. He chalked it up to the usual pressure of Hollywood obligations, the never-ending cycle of offers, interviews, and expectations. Just as he set his tablet aside, the doorbell rang. The hour was late, nearly midnight. He rose, heart pulsing with a mild curiosity. He was not expecting visitors, nor had he ordered anything that might arrive so late. Opening the front door, he encountered no one, only the soft hush of the drizzle and a small package resting on the doorstep, wrapped in plain brown paper with no visible return address. He picked it up, glancing left and right. The streetlights revealed no figure lurking in the shadows. Puzzled, he stepped back inside and examined the package. His name was written in neat, cursive letters on a simple label, Matt Damon. No other markings. Possibly a fan mail item that bypassed security or a misguided promotional drop. He opened the package in the study, expecting some novelty or unsolicited script. Instead, he found a small wooden box, intricately carved with swirling patterns reminiscent of vines. Nestled inside the box was a single piece of polished crystal that caught the lamplight in shifting, iridescent hues. A folded parchment lay beneath it. Cautiously, he removed the parchment and read, "Mr. Damon, forgive the intrusion. If you seek an adventure surpassing the realm of staged illusions, bring this stone to Whitehaven Coast in northern Scotland. Past the cliffs stands an old estate where you may discover something long hidden, something that calls upon your heart. Trust yourself, for this journey is not about fame or fortune. The inheritance waiting there transcends the material." A keeper of resonance, he reread the words twice, gripping the polished crystal in his other hand. The note's phrasing, "inheritance calls upon your heart," sparked a flare of intrigue. Yet rational sense told him to dismiss it as a hoax. People regularly reached out with bizarre offers or cryptic letters. This might be just another attempt at capturing a celebrity's attention. Still, a tiny spark of curiosity refused to die. Why send him a crystal? Why mention Whitehaven Coast in Scotland? The swirling design of the wooden box matched the labyrinthine style carved into the crystal as well. A subtle yearning stirred within him, an echo of the restlessness that had been shadowing him for months. As an actor and humanitarian, he had traveled worldwide, but never on a quest quite like this, spurred by a cryptic item. Perhaps it was the perfect impetus to step beyond routine. After all, behind the veneer of film success and charitable endeavors, he often felt a quiet thirst for an experience that challenged his soul in ways a script never could. Before bed that night, he placed the crystal on a small shelf in his room, noticing how it seemed to catch even the faintest glint of moonlight. He dismissed thoughts of traveling to Scotland, telling himself that life was too busy for such an impulsive excursion. Still, when sleep finally claimed him, he dreamt of windswept cliffs and a looming estate perched at the ocean's edge. Glimpses of swirling patterns drifted behind his eyelids. Over the next few days, he immersed himself in responsibilities, script negotiations, interviews, philanthropic planning. Yet the memory of the odd letter and the shining crystal clung to him like a faint perfume. He mentioned it only once to a close friend, who laughed it off as an elaborate fan stunt. Matt feigned agreement, but his curiosity, far from waning, grew stronger. He found himself searching Whitehaven Coast in northern Scotland on the internet. The region was known for dramatic cliffs, fierce storms, and remnants of old manors. He discovered references to local folklore about a resonant stone, though the details were scant. Some obscure local blog mentioned tales of a hidden estate rumored to hold intangible treasures. Finally, late one evening, he sat in his study staring at the crystal, the swirl of lights within it. Yes, it seemed to shift even without direct illumination, held a quiet magnetism. The caretaker who wrote that note claimed an inheritance awaited him. Could there be more to life than the cyclical swirl of Hollywood's demands, even combined with the meaningful philanthropic ventures he cherished? Was it possible that a deeper calling beckoned from across the sea? In a moment of resolve, he picked up the phone and arranged time off. He told only 2 trusted associates that he needed to travel discreetly. With schedules juggled, statements prepared about a personal break, and minimal staff involvement, he booked a flight to Scotland under an alias, determined to slip away from the spotlight for however long this quest required. The caretaker's letter felt bizarre, but a whisper in his chest insisted that ignoring it might mean missing an experience that could forever shift his outlook. Within a week, Matt Damon found himself aboard a transatlantic flight to Glasgow, the crystal carefully nestled in his carry-on bag, the letter's words echoing. "Trust yourself, for this journey is not about fame or fortune." He told himself that, at worst, it might be an interesting diversion, a chance to wander the Scottish coast incognito, clear his head, and quench this nagging restlessness. At best, who knew? Maybe the letter's promise held substance. Perhaps an inheritance of knowledge or clarity awaited him far from the cameras and accolades. He gazed out the window at the clouds illuminated by the plane's lights. An odd excitement gnawed at him, mingled with nerves. He, Matt Damon, nearing the apex of a storied career, was chasing an anonymous message to a remote shore. Yet a quiet voice in him said, "This is what you need, more than another starring role. A genuine, unscripted adventure." With a small exhale, he closed his eyes, letting the hum of the engines lull him, mentally bracing for whatever awaited him on the distant Whitehaven coast. Chapter 2. The Whispering Cliffs landing in Glasgow. Matt Damon kept a low profile, wearing a simple baseball cap and sunglasses. He had planned meticulously to slip through the airport with minimal fuss. An unmarked sedan met him at a discreet exit. He had arranged it online beforehand. No personal driver or staff. The driver, a middle-aged Scotsman named Colin, smiled politely but asked no questions. They drove northwest, through rolling landscapes of emerald hills and scattered sheep. Eventually, the sky turned gray, and a light drizzle tapped the car's windshield. The roads emptied as they approached more rural regions. Matt gazed at the passing scenery, feeling an uncharacteristic blend of nerves and wonder. He carried the small wooden box in his lap, the crystal carefully wrapped inside. By late afternoon, they arrived near a craggy coastline battered by gusty winds. Colin pointed out a sign reading Whitehaven Coast, restricted access. The caretaker's note had mentioned past the cliffs stands an old estate. Colin parked at a small levee. "This is as far as I can drive you, sir," he said gently. "The path beyond is steep and not well maintained. Sure you want to continue on foot?" Matt thanked him, stepping out into the bracing sea air. He hefted a small rucksack containing the crystal, a few supplies, and a weatherproof jacket. The driver offered him a final curious glance, but withheld any comment. Within minutes, Matt was alone, the wind tousling his hair as he made his way up a narrow path lined by tall grass. Far below, waves crashed against jagged rocks, sending salty spray into the air. He trudged on, heart pounding not from the physical exertion, but from anticipation. The caretaker's letter was vague, offering no precise address, only the suggestion of an estate. The path twisted along the cliff's edge. Occasionally, the sea mist obscured his view, though the swirling gusts cleared it just as quickly. After half an hour of careful progress, he glimpsed, through the haze, a high, wrought iron gate set into an old stone wall. The gate bore a crest shaped like a spiral intertwined with a stylized gem, closely matching the swirling pattern on the wooden box back in L.A. pulse quickening. Matt approached. The gate was slightly ajar, rust creeping along its hinges. Beyond it, a narrow lane disappeared into an overgrown lawn. At the lane's end, the outlines of a large manor house emerged, dimmed by the mist. He felt an odd mixture of awe and trepidation, like stepping onto a forgotten film set, except there were no cameras or script to rely on. Pushing the gate open, He entered the grounds. Grass and wildflowers had overtaken much of the estate, indicating decades of neglect. The mansion itself rose 2 stories high, with gabled roofs and tall windows. Some windows were boarded, others broken. A once grand front porch sagged in places, the wooden balustrade chipped and discolored. Above the door, a faded coat of arms displayed the same swirling gem motif. He climbed the porch stairs, footsteps echoing on creaking boards. His mind spun. Had someone truly invited him here? Why? Was he trespassing? The caretaker's note suggested it was not a typical trespass. With a shaky breath, he rapped on the door. The sound reverberated in the stillness, answered only by the wind's lonely moan. No footsteps approached from inside. Tentatively, he tried the handle. It turned. The door groaned open, revealing a dusty foyer lined with cracked tiles. A grand staircase rose on the left, the banister draped in cobwebs. Faint light seeped through dirty windows, illuminating motes of dust swirling in the air. The place smelled of damp and old wood. "Hello," he called, voice echoing. "I received a note. Is anyone here?" No reply. A hush blanketed the interior. He stepped forward, drawn by a sense of destiny. In the dim gloom, he spotted a corridor branching to the right. The caretaker's letter indicated an inheritance that transcends the material. That sounded more like a cryptic riddle than anything else, but here he was in an apparently abandoned manor. Yet, the swirl of the gem crest repeated on the door frames confirmed this was the correct place. He advanced, exploring each corridor. Rooms lay in disrepair. A once stately library with collapsed shelves, a drawing room with furniture draped in mildew-stained sheets. Yet subtle hints of grandeur lingered. A marble mantel, stained glass windows depicting swirling patterns, silver-plated knobs on doors. In one corner, he discovered a battered portrait of a regal figure, the swirling gem crest on their lapel. The plaque read, "Lord Alistair Wingfold, 1795. Could the Wingfold family be linked to this swirling gem motif? Eventually, he found a small sitting room near the rear of the house, less damaged than the others. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Someone stood by the window, wearing a gray cloak. Startled, he froze. The figure turned, revealing an older woman with piercing eyes. Her face was lined with an air of authority, and though she looked at him kindly, a certain guardedness lingered. "Mr. Damon," she said, voice carrying a lilting Scottish accent. "You have come." His heart leapt. You know me. Are you the caretaker? Who sent me the letter?" She inclined her head, in a manner of speaking. "My name is Celestine Wingfold, a descendant of the original keepers of this estate. We have watched you from afar, sensing your search for something beyond the glitz of stardom. The stone you carry is more than a mere trinket." He realized he had unconsciously drawn the wooden box from his rucksack, clutching it. The swirling design glowed faintly. Or was that just a trick of the low light? "So you left that package at my doorstep in Los Angeles? How did you even?" Celestine raised a hand gently. "All will be explained. This estate, Wingfold Manor, once stood as a gateway for those chosen to guard the gem of resonance, an ancient relic with a power not measured by wealth or fame. Only those whose hearts resonate with humility can awaken it. Generations ago, the Wingfold line scattered across lands, waiting for rightful bearers." He blinked in confusion. "I'm not sure I follow. I am an actor, not some artifact custodian." She offered a patient smile. "Your profession is immaterial. The gem's synergy emerges from inner sincerity and a longing for genuine purpose. We discovered traces of your philanthropic spirit, your quieter deeds behind the curtain. The gem recognized your potential, so we delivered the invitation." A swirl of disbelief mingled with curiosity. He had never considered that his philanthropic efforts or personal convictions might draw the attention of an ancient lineage in Scotland. "So what exactly is the gem of resonance?" The caretaker's note mentioned an inheritance, but I assumed it was some intangible metaphor. Celestine stepped closer, gesturing for him to open the wooden box fully. Inside, the crystal shimmered with muted color. That crystal is no ordinary stone. It interacts with human intent. For centuries, the wind folds protected it, ensuring it did not fall into unworthy hands. Legends claim it can amplify one's truest self, light or darkness. Thus it must be entrusted only to those who walk the path of compassion. His heart pounded. Could a stone truly channel or amplify intangible qualities? Part of him wanted to laugh at the outlandish premise, but standing in this decaying manner, in the presence of Celestine's unwavering gaze, the notion felt oddly believable. He recalled the caretaker's letters stating, "transcends the material." Perhaps this estate and its relics signaled a deeper spiritual legacy. Celestine turned, beckoning him to follow. "Kulme." The house stands mostly in ruin, but the crypt below remains intact. We keep it sealed except when a chosen seeker arrives. If you wish to claim your inheritance, you must pass the estate's final test. The gem will guide you. Though uncertain, he felt compelled to comply. Passing through winding corridors, he noticed signs of partial maintenance. Some floors swept, doorways recently oiled. Evidently, Celestine had been overseeing the place in a quiet, unpublicized manner. They reached a locked metal gate leading to a spiral stone staircase. Celestine drew a rusted key from her cloak, unlocking it with a grinding sound. She handed him a small lantern. Below lies the Windfold crypt. Within, the final test of your sincerity. If you succeed, the gem of resonance fully bonds with your spirit. If not, the crypt will bar your path. He swallowed. What do I do specifically? Her lined face softened. Simply enter with humility and willingness to confront your deepest truths. The crypt reveals illusions shaped by your heart. If you are at peace with what it shows, the path opens. Return with the stone still glowing. If it dims, you are not yet ready. A wave of apprehension rolled over him. He had come to Scotland on a whim, expecting perhaps an unusual adventure, but this level of mystical complexity was far beyond a mere curiosity. Yet, the caretaker's note, the estate's swirling crest, Celestine's calm conviction, it all felt strangely real. He nodded, summoning courage. "I will try. Then go," she murmured, stepping aside. Clutching the lantern and the crystal-laden box, he descended the spiral steps, each footstep echoing on cold stone. The gloom below felt alive, as if the estate's centuries of history exhaled in the darkness. At the staircase bottom, a stout wooden door stood half ajar. Breathing carefully, he pushed it open. The crypt he entered was a vaulted chamber with carved stone columns and a mosaic floor bearing the swirling gem motif. Sconces along the walls held unlit torches. At the chamber's center lay a circular dais of polished marble, etched with runes. A hush pressed upon him, the air thick with centuries of silent watch. As he stepped onto the dais, faint motes of luminescent mist gathered, swirling around his feet. The crystal in his box flickered, responding to the crypt's energy. His pulse hammered. Celestine had mentioned illusions shaped by the heart. Would it show him regrets? Fears? Could he handle it? Suddenly, the crypt darkened, though the lantern cast a feeble glow. Shadows twisted around him, forming shapes that resolved into scenes from his life. He saw glimpses of film premieres, philanthropic dinners, private moments with family. One illusion displayed him stepping off a red carpet. Exhaustion etched into his features despite the smiles for cameras. Another showed a time he had turned away from a friend's request because of professional obligations, a memory he had buried for years. He flinched as the illusions morphed, revealing him sitting alone in a quiet room, head in hands, wrestling with doubts about whether his activism truly made a difference or if it was overshadowed by celebrity vanity. The illusions felt personal, raw, laying bare the hidden conflicts he seldom voiced even to close friends. Guilt, longing, pride, frustration, all churned in a swirl of ephemeral images. Yet, interspersed among these painful memories were uplifting visions. His genuine camaraderie with certain colleagues, heartfelt moments of aiding communities in need, laughter shared with family and beloved friends. The illusions underscored the duality of his life, success tempered by inner questioning. He realized the crypt was testing his willingness to accept both the bright and dark corners of his soul. Knees trembling, he closed his eyes briefly, inhaling a steady breath. He reminded himself that he had come seeking deeper purpose. Hiding from these reflections would not help. Instead, he let the illusions wash over him. Yes, he had regrets, times of self-doubt, unintentional neglect. But he also carried a sincere desire to do good, to help others, to expand his empathy beyond superficial gestures. As that acknowledgement crystallized in his mind, a subtle warmth emanated from the box, as if the gem recognized his honesty. Opening his eyes, he saw the illusions fade, replaced by a gentle glow suffusing the crypt. The swirling mist retreated, unveiling the dais beneath his feet. The runes etched on the marble glowed softly. A hush reigned. Then the gem within the box pulsed, sending a spark of radiance across the dais. A small pedestal rose from the floor, as though triggered by his acceptance. Atop it lay a tarnished medallion bearing the swirling crest, similar to the pattern on the crystal. Carefully, he reached out and took it. The metal felt warm, humming faintly in his grasp. Without warning, the illusions reappeared for an instant. Flashes of the same moments, but now merged with glimpses of possibility. Him collaborating with new global partners, bridging philanthropic efforts in ways he had not imagined. Scenes of him listening more deeply to personal relationships, forging stronger connections. The ephemeral visions radiated hope, an encouragement that his sincerity could yield tangible results beyond the crypt. Then the chamber's glow ebbed, returning to normal candlelit dimness. The illusions vanished. He stood, holding the medallion, heart pounding. The swirling pattern matched the gem in the wooden box. Celestine had said, "If you succeed, the gem of resonance bonds with your spirit." Perhaps this was the final sign. He stepped off the dais. The door leading back up the spiral stairs creaked. Celestine stood at the threshold, lantern in hand, expression solemn yet kind. "You have faced the illusions without fleeing. The crypt acknowledges your sincerity." Her gaze fell to the medallion in his hand. She nodded. "That belongs with you now." Relief and an odd sense of reverence washed over him. "What does it mean?" She offered a slight smile. "You are now a keeper of the gem's resonance. This estate's secrets are shared with you. Though you will eventually return to your life, the bond remains. Through that medallion, the gem can guide your empathic actions, strengthening your resolve and clarity. Yet be vigilant, for misuse or moral neglect can corrupt its potential." He followed Celestine upstairs, mind swirling with wonder. She led him back to the sitting room, where a single oil lamp flickered. Rain tapped against the windows. Without the illusions, the house felt once more like a silent ruin, though now it carried a hush of acknowledgement. She poured him a small cup of tea from a kettle he had not noticed earlier. He sat in a dusty chair, sipping, reflecting on how quickly events had escalated, less than an hour since he arrived. Celestine watched him thoughtfully. "In time, you may revisit this place, or you may not. The gem does not force your path. You remain free to use your talents, your platform, your compassion in whichever manner your heart deems best. The inheritance is intangible, but no less real." He managed a grateful nod. "I appreciate your trust, but I do not fully grasp how to harness this resonance. Will it change me drastically? Will it overshadow my normal life?" Celestine's expression softened. "Consider it a gentle amplifier. Your values, your empathy, your yearning for deeper purpose, it magnifies those traits. You might perceive greater insight into people's emotional states, have heightened intuition for philanthropic ventures. Yet if you stray into arrogance or cynicism, the gem's resonance may fade. In that sense, it is a mirror for your moral compass." He exhaled, letting her words settle. Possibly this was not so different from the intangible motivations that had driven his philanthropic work thus far. Perhaps the difference was that now he held a direct symbol, the medallion, tied to the gem's legacy. If nothing else, it would serve as a potent reminder to remain true to the ideals that had brought him here. Celestine stood, collecting the teacups. Return when you wish. But for now, you have seen what you came to see. Take the medallion, keep the gem, and let them guide your steps. The caretaker's letter mentioned an inheritance beyond the material. That inheritance is your enhanced capacity for empathy and purposeful action. Guard it well. Silence stretched as the implications sank in. In that stillness, he felt the gem's subdued glow within the wooden box. He slid the medallion into his pocket, rising. Thank you, Celestine. I do not know how to repay your hospitality. She simply bowed her head, live with sincerity. That is repayment enough. And so Matt Damon left Windfold Manor, braving the wind and rain once more. The swirl crest on the gate seemed to watch him as he passed. He paused, glancing back at the looming structure that had introduced him to a realm of illusions, ancestral stewardship, and intangible power. Then, with quiet determination, he descended the cliff path. He felt changed, carrying something luminous inside, a sense of having glimpsed a deeper dimension that transcended Hollywood's bright but fleeting lights. At the bottom of the path, Colin's sedan awaited. The driver did not pry as Matt climbed in, thoroughly drenched, face brimming with a subdued awe. The journey back to the hotel was silent, but the hush thrummed with significance. Once inside his rented suite, he set the wooden box on a bedside table. He took the medallion from his pocket, noticing the swirl pattern glinted faintly even in the dim lamplight. He had found the caretaker, discovered the gem, and endured the crypt's illusions. All for an intangible inheritance, some subtle amplification of his best qualities. Cynics might laugh at such a notion. Yet he sensed something real had occurred in the labyrinthine halls beneath that ancient estate. The illusions had confronted him with personal truths, and he had not fled. In doing so, he felt more aligned with his true self than ever before. That night, he slept deeply, no dreams haunting him. The next day, he arranged a flight home, opting not to linger in Scotland. The caretaker's letter had served its purpose. Over the ensuing weeks, his life would resume in California. But he carried the gem of resonance, as Celestine had named it, and the memory of illusions that laid bare his soul. A vow echoed in his mind, to channel the gem's guiding resonance for greater good, forging projects that transcended vanity, using his influence to uplift rather than to chase fleeting accolades. Little did he know how profoundly that vow would shape his next chapter, or how the gem's hum might resonate in unexpected ways, guiding him through trials both large and small. The caretaker's message had said, "Bring this stone to Whitehaven Coast in northern Scotland." He had done so, and returned with more than he bargained for, an inheritance of moral clarity. Now, the real test would unfold in the everyday swirl of Hollywood demands and philanthropic ambitions. The gem saga had just begun. Chapter 3. Strange glimmerings back home. Once Matt Damon returned to Los Angeles, he slipped into the usual swirl of phone calls, script readings, and meeting requests. Yet a subdued transformation colored his interactions. He wore the medallion beneath his shirt, feeling its gentle warmth against his chest. At first, he was not sure if it was mere psychological suggestion. Did the gem truly hold power, or was it purely symbolic? But soon, odd experiences hinted that something more was at play. For instance, during a script meeting, he felt a sudden empathy for a screenwriter who bristled with tension. Matt asked a gentle question about the screenwriter's personal stake in the story, and the man opened up, sharing a vulnerable anecdote. The meeting blossomed into a richer collaboration, bridging a gap that might otherwise have remained unspoken. As Matt left the room, he found the medallion felt slightly warmer, as if encouraging deeper emotional connection. Another time, while finalizing philanthropic allocations, he sensed an intuitive nudge to fund a small educational project in a remote region, an area he had not previously considered. Searching further revealed that region was on the brink of a crisis with little outside support. The impetus to offer help felt more than random. It was as though the gem gently guided him to see overlooked needs. He confided a fraction of these impressions to his close friend and philanthropic advisor, Bridget. She raised an eyebrow, but did not dismiss it. "Maybe your subconscious is just more attuned," she suggested. "Or maybe you sense a moral impetus to do more in places people rarely look." He accepted that pragmatic explanation, while privately recalling Celestine's words about the gem amplifying empathy and purpose. Meanwhile, the swirl of Hollywood pressed on. Interviews, cameo offers, and potential starring roles flooded his agent's phone. Matt found himself turning down more projects than usual, insisting on only those aligned with deeper social commentary or emotional truth. Some in the industry called him more selective, even eccentric. Yet, ironically, the sense of alignment he felt fueled his best performances in the projects he did accept. Directors praised his depth, calling it new maturity. Then, an unsettling incident made him realize the gem was not solely a boon. Attending a high-profile charity gala, he encountered a business mogul widely rumored to exploit philanthropic fronts for personal gain. While shaking the man's hand, Matt felt a jarring wave of discomfort. The medallion, pressed beneath his tuxedo, flared with a strange heat, leaving him slightly dizzy. He had to excuse himself, skin prickling with goosebumps. It was as though the gem recoiled from the man's manipulative aura, alerting Matt to a dark resonance. The mogul's smarmy grin followed him across the room, fueling an uneasy sense that not all philanthropic ventures were genuine. That night, he recalled Celestine's warning. Misuse or moral neglect can corrupt its potential. Perhaps the gem also served as a barometer for negativity or deceit. The weight of such a device unsettled him. He had not asked for a moral censor, but it had arrived all the same. As weeks passed, he carefully navigated social events, paying closer attention to how the gem's subtle pulses aligned with his intuitive sense of trust or caution. It was not always so dramatic, often more like a gentle prompt, but it influenced his dealings. Months slid by, the gem quietly guiding him to deepen philanthropic alliances, champion underdog stories in film development, and cultivate heartfelt connections with colleagues. Some teased that he had become the soul of each project, gently steering conversations toward authenticity. He never mentioned the medallion's presence, though a few noticed the swirl crest that sometimes peeked out from his shirt collar. One autumn day, an envelope arrived bearing a UK postmark. He recognized Celestine's careful handwriting. Heart-quickening, he opened it. "Mr. Damon, I trust the gem of resonance has served you well. I write because an unusual phenomenon stirs at Windfold Manor. A subtle disturbance in the estate's crypt suggests the gem's power is sought by another, or that a lingering threat from old times reawakens. If your bond with the gem is strong, you may sense the crypt's call. I advise caution. Keep the gem close, and remain vigilant for signs that a second caretaker or malevolent force emerges. Yours in stewardship, Celestine Windfold." He felt a chill. Did some adversary aim to harness the gem for darker ends? Was the Windfold lineage threatened by intruders? For centuries, the Windfold estate had presumably withstood countless challenges, but perhaps the caretaker's vantage told her more. The letter implied he should be prepared. Some intangible tension weighed on him, like a subtle hum in the back of his mind. Though unnerving, he found no immediate sign of trouble. The gem's daily pulses continued gently, guiding him. He carried on with his routine, interspersed with philanthropic travels to Africa and Asia. Yet a new vigil grew in him. Late at night, he sometimes dreamt of the crypt's swirling illusions, merging with images of an unknown figure rummaging through Windfold Manor. He woke with a sense of impending conflict, though he had no tangible proof. By winter, his philanthropic engagements led him to a major global summit in Geneva, addressing water scarcity. On stage, he delivered a heartfelt speech about forging alliances for universal water access, weaving emotional anecdotes from his visits to remote communities. The audience's applause was thunderous, but deeper than the applause, he sensed a resonance. People's hearts awakened, if only for the summit's duration. Walking off stage, he felt the gem's warmth, as if encouraging him to keep bridging these dialogues. Moments later, he caught sight of a solitary figure in the backstage corridor, a tall man with a hawk-like gaze, wearing a dark suit. Their eyes locked briefly, the man's expression cold, an odd flicker crossing his face when he spotted the swirl crest at Matt's collar. Instantly, the man turned and vanished into the crowd. Matt felt a spike of alarm, the gem throbbing unexpectedly. He tried to follow, but the corridor teemed with delegates, and the mysterious man was gone. This fleeting encounter rattled him. That intense stare, the recognition of a swirl crest, the gem's surge of energy. Did it connect to Celestine's warning about a second caretaker or malevolent force? Anxiety gnawed at him. He needed to confirm if Windfold Manor or the gem was under threat. Perhaps the man was just an odd delegate, but something in his gut insisted otherwise. Taking a quiet moment, he withdrew to an empty corridor, resting a hand over the medallion. For the first time, he tried to consciously commune with the gem's resonance. He closed his eyes, letting his breathing slow. A faint hum stirred in his chest, accompanied by fleeting impressions, images of the Windfold crypt, swirling illusions, the caretaker's solemn face. Then, a sense of shadow, as though a predatory presence hovered near. He opened his eyes, heart pounding. So the gem confirmed danger. That night, he wrote an urgent letter to Celestine, describing the incident in Geneva, the man's piercing stare and the gem's reaction. He asked if Windfold Manor had encountered intruders or if local rumors pointed to a re-emerging threat. Posting it by express courier, he waited anxiously for a reply. Meanwhile, his daily life carried on. He wrapped up the summit, navigated more philanthropic visits, and returned to Los Angeles. A sense of calm and tension mixed, an undercurrent of watchfulness overshadowing his usual routine. He recalled how the caretaker's note had once summoned him to Whitehaven. Now it seemed the estate's secrets had drawn unwelcome attention from someone else. 1 week later, a response arrived from Celestine. Mr. Damon, your experience aligns with rumors that an old faction once fixated on harnessing the gem's power might have revived. Local sightings suggest strangers prowling Windfold's grounds. They vanish before I can confront them. The crypt resonates with unease. Keep vigilant. If this faction seeks the gem, they may attempt to corner you or manipulate you to gain access. Trust in the gem's guidance, but remain cautious. I fear you may be tested beyond illusions if these shadows pursue you. Stay safe. Celestine Windfold, reading her words, a chill ran down his spine. The gem was not just a moral barometer or philanthropic amplifier. It was apparently valuable to individuals craving intangible power. Perhaps they believed controlling it would grant them manipulative abilities, unleashing illusions, or corrupting hearts. Matt Damon understood that if they forced him to give up the gem or manipulated him, the consequences could be dire. Unsure of what to do, he confided in Bridget, his philanthropic advisor. He revealed only that certain parties might want to exploit a symbol in his possession, a relic from Scotland. He admitted it had intangible significance tied to a caretaker's lineage. Bridget was alarmed, but supportive, suggesting he ramp up personal security. He hesitated, not wanting a big entourage or public fuss. The gem demanded quiet authenticity, not sensational drama. Nevertheless, he discreetly hired a former intelligence consultant to watch for suspicious approaches. The world was large, and the gem's pursuers might not strike immediately. Matt tried to remain calm, continuing his philanthropic ventures. Yet in the back of his mind, he recalled how the caretaker's illusions forced him to face personal truths. A real adversary might attempt to twist those truths or harness illusions for sinister ends. Meanwhile, the gem itself glowed softly each morning, encouraging him to proceed with sincerity. Some days, it felt like a blessing, enhancing creative synergy on a new film project or forging deeper connections with colleagues. Other days, the threat overshadowed its gifts, leaving him restless. He wondered if he should fly back to Windfold Manor for direct confrontation. But Celestine had only advised vigilance, not immediate return. She said the crypt was warded. If intruders sought the gem, they might come for him, not the estate. Unfolding weeks turned into months. A subtle watchfulness became part of his daily life. Despite the fear, the gem's gentle nudge maintained his purposeful direction. He said no to trivial endeavors, poured more energy into meaningful film scripts that tackled social issues. He quietly grew more revered in philanthropic circles, forging unique alliances. The gem's resonance thrived when used for unifying causes. Yet in the shadows, the memory of that hawk-eyed man from Geneva lingered. Matt Damon felt a sense that something would eventually come to a head. He did not know when or how, but he prepared himself mentally for a confrontation that might surpass illusions in a crypt. For now, all he could do was remain steadfast, trusting that empathy and moral clarity, amplified by the gem, would guide him safely. The caretaker's inheritance was indeed intangible, but its test had only just begun. Chapter 4. An ominous encounter. The tension coiled for months before finally snapping into reality one cool evening in Los Angeles. Matt Damon had just finished a low-key dinner meeting with a director friend. Opting to drive himself home, he navigated the city's winding streets. The gem beneath his shirt glowed faintly, as usual. He had grown used to its presence. That night, though, it gave a sudden lurch of warmth so intense it bordered on pain, catching him off guard at a traffic light. Alarmed, he pressed a hand to his chest. The swirl crest medallion almost vibrated. At that moment, in his rearview mirror, he spotted a dark SUV pulling up behind him, headlights glaring. As the light turned green, the SUV remained uncomfortably close, almost tailgating. The gem's heat did not subside. Instinct told him something was off. He tried turning onto a side street. The SUV followed, continuing the chase. His heart hammered. This felt different from paparazzi pursuit. No cameraman or typical paparazzi van. He sped up, weaving through side roads. The SUV matched his pace, ignoring traffic signals. The gem flared again, fueling a spike of adrenaline. Could this be the dreaded approach Celestine warned of? He scrolled through his phone contacts, preparing to call the intelligence consultant he had hired. But no time. The SUV roared around him, cutting him off near a deserted stretch. Forced to brake abruptly, he spun the wheel, tires screeching. The SUV blocked the road, doors opening. 3 figures in dark suits emerged, one brandishing a sidearm. Matt's mouth went dry. He locked his doors, preparing to reverse. Another car screeched up behind him, boxing him in. A well-coordinated trap. The gem's heat pounded in his chest. He realized with dread that these men likely wanted the gem of resonance. He fumbled for his phone, but the men approached swiftly, guns drawn. The driver's side window was hammered by the butt of a weapon. "Mr. Damon, step out," hissed one of them, voice thick with tension. "We will not harm you if you comply." Panic flared. He was no action hero outside of film sets. His mind raced. The gem might help him sense illusions or empathic currents, but it offered no physical shield against bullets. Still, he recalled Celestine's caution about illusions. Could he harness them to stall or confuse these assailants? Or was that ability only accessible within the Winfold crypt? "Out!" barked the man again. With no recourse, Matt complied, raising hands slowly as he exited the car. The men quickly searched him, confiscating his phone. One patted down his chest, pausing at the medallion's outline. "He has it," the man murmured to the tallest figure, who seemed to be the leader. "We can sense its resonance." The leader stepped forward, cold eyes reminiscent of the hawk-eyed man from Geneva. Indeed, it was him, a tall man with a narrow face. "I have waited for this moment, Damon," he said, voice low. "You carry an artifact that belongs to a more ambitious lineage. Hand it over, and perhaps we let you live. Resist, and regret will follow." Matt's heart thundered. This gem, it is not a weapon. It is a moral amplifier, a symbolic relic. "Why do you want it?" The leader sneered. "Symbolic relic? Perhaps, but it also allows illusions, empathy manipulation. My faction believes it can sway hearts en masse, if harnessed properly. We will expand influence far beyond philanthropic trifles. Now, give me the gem. His men pressed guns to Matt's side. Fear churned in him. The caretaker's vow soared in his memory. Misuse or moral neglect can corrupt its potential. If these men took it, they might well harness illusions for manipulative ends, fueling tyranny or exploitation. They might coerce leaders or destabilize entire communities under a pretense of philanthropic front. That was unthinkable. He mustered his composure. If you force me, the gem will not respond. It will sense your corrupt motives. You might only get a dull stone. The leader scoffed. That is for us to decide. We have methods to break any barrier. Hand it over, or we will do more than threaten. Shaking, Matt realized negotiation was futile. These men believed they had the means to forcibly tune the gem's resonance. He had to act quickly. He recalled how the illusions in the windfold crypt sprang from his own spirit. Could the gem evoke illusions here, outside the estate? Celestine never explicitly said, but the caretaker's illusions had tested him in the crypt. Perhaps the gem's innate power resided within him now. If so, maybe he could conjure illusions strong enough to distract or disarm them. Desperate, he closed his eyes, focusing on the gem's throbbing heat. He pictured the illusions in the crypt, how they manifested aspects of one's life. This time, he tried to shape an illusion that might stun these aggressors, tapping into their hidden fears or insecurities. He concentrated, ignoring the gun barrel pressed to his ribs. The swirl crest on the medallion burned, as if urging him onward. Initially, nothing happened. The leader demanded again, "Now, Damon, enough games." Another man cocked his gun. A wave of panic nearly derailed Matt's attempt. Summoning courage, he visualized thick, swirling mist, the kind that overcame him in the crypt. He poured his emotional resolve into it, recalling the caretaker's instructions about illusions shaped by the heart. Suddenly, the night air shimmered. The men froze, eyes widening. Matt felt a surge of intangible energy billow outward from the gem, enveloping them all. Mist formed out of nowhere, swirling around the deserted street. Gunmen peered about in confusion. Then illusions flickered. Each man confronted visions of his own making. One attacker staggered back, face contorted with terror as he saw something only he recognized. Another dropped his weapon, staggering away from an unseen horror. The leader turned frantically, shouting, "What is this trickery? Focus, you fools!" Matt himself struggled not to be overwhelmed, for illusions threatened to swirl around him too. But the gem's resonance anchored him, letting him remain calm. He seized the moment, stepping behind the men's vehicles. The illusions only needed to last long enough for him to escape or call for help. The leader spun, trying to aim, but the swirling mist flickered with shapes of his own nightmares. He cursed, grabbing at empty air. Free from immediate threat, Matt sprang into the driver's seat of one of their SUVs, keys still in the ignition. The illusions continued to swirl around the man. He started the engine, heart pounding. The gem burned hot, fueling the illusions. He jammed the accelerator, the SUV lurching forward. Shots rang out, bullets pinging off metal. He ducked low, but the illusions evidently hampered their aim. Tires squealed as he sped away, leaving the men behind in chaos. He careened through quiet streets, illusions still flickering at the edges of his vision. The gem's heat gradually subsided, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. Finally, after turning multiple corners, he saw no sign of pursuit. He pulled into a secluded alley, panting, mind reeling from what he had just unleashed. The illusions had been real enough to incapacitate armed men. The gem's potential was indeed formidable. After ensuring no immediate threat, he used the SUV's built-in phone to contact his intelligence consultant and Bridget, explaining he was in danger. Within minutes, an ally from his security detail arrived in an unmarked car. Matt left the stolen SUV behind, transferring to the safer vehicle. They raced to a secure building. He was shaken, drenched in sweat, but uninjured aside from superficial scrapes. Over the next hours, he recounted the incident in detail to a small circle of trusted individuals. The intelligence consultant found that no official record of the men or the license plates existed. The hawk-eyed leader had planned meticulously. The consultant warned that these men might regroup for another attempt. This was not a random mugging. It was a targeted approach for something intangible. Matt recognized that it had to be the gem. He realized with dread that illusions, while a means of defense, could also become a weapon in unscrupulous hands. That night, from the safety of a guarded suite, Matt typed a message to Celestine. "They came for me. I used illusions to escape. It was terrifying. They might try again. Any counsel you can offer is welcome. This power is too dangerous to leave me unprepared." He stared at the send button, marveling at how surreal his life had become. From an A-list actor to a clandestine steward of a mystical gem that conjured illusions. Yet he could not regret retrieving the gem from Windfold Manor. If left hidden, perhaps these men would have stolen it anyway, in an unguarded moment. At least now, he was aware of the threat. He pressed send, hoping Celestine could provide insight. In the following days, security around him intensified discreetly. Though he disliked the intrusion, he recognized the risk. No second attempt materialized, but an uneasy calm settled in him. The illusions he had summoned haunted his memory, highlighting the gem's power. He had best learn to control it responsibly, or risk accidents. This was not a game. Indeed, the caretaker's vow had said guard it well. He now realized that guard it included harnessing illusions ethically. A week later, Celestine's reply arrived. "Mr. Damon, your resourcefulness saved you. These illusions come from your synergy with the gem. However, invoking them can tax your spirit. Be cautious not to rely on illusions for minor conflicts, lest you unravel your moral clarity. As for your pursuers, they may regroup. Our genealogical records mention an old faction, the Spectres of Highland, who once coveted relics like ours to shape reality. They presumably have revived. It falls upon you and me to ensure they fail. We might need to unify our guardianship. If you sense they plan a direct assault on Windfold Manor, let me know or come. The estate has wards not easily breached. Stay vigilant." Celestine Windfold reading it. Matt felt an odd relief that Celestine was prepared for a second wave. But the notion of traveling back to Windfold Manor for a potential standoff or defensive measure unsettled him. The caretaker's illusions in that crypt had tested him, but an actual battle with an ancient faction, armed with guns and unscrupulous cunning, was another realm entirely. Nevertheless, a seed of conviction formed. If these specters of Highland threatened the gem, threatened Windfold Manor, or threatened him, he could not simply hide. He possessed the gem's resonance now, and that entailed responsibility. Celestine's final line, "We might need to unify our guardianship," lingered. He would not abandon her or the estate to face these adversaries alone. For now, though, a fragile lull settled. He resumed philanthropic work, finishing a film project that advocated for social reform. The gem glowed softly each morning, reminding him that behind every mundane task lay a vast tapestry of moral potential. People praised him for blending stardom with sincerity, calling him an advocate for meaningful change. They had no clue about the illusions he commanded or the ancient estate in Scotland that anchored his vow. Time advanced. The hawk-eyed threat remained invisible, though faint rumors reached him. Anonymous men inquiring about Windfold Manor's history, searching for local contacts in Los Angeles who might connect them to an old scion of Scottish heritage. The intelligence consultant confirmed these rumors, but could not pinpoint the group's hideout. Tension simmered like a pot about to boil over. Matt Damon prepared mentally for the possibility that to truly secure the gem, he might need to return to Windfold Manor and face whatever shadows threatened from the edges of history.